All right, so the first card we're going to make is one of the Gelli printed embossing pieces. So we've already chosen our rocks piece. These are the two samples I have. It doesn't matter what your embossing folder is. It just creates a textured background, and then we're going to put some die cuts in the front. I'm going to do the flower one here so I can show you how I colored those flowers. So I've got two of my die cuts already done. I'm just going to die cut the last one here. And run that through. And then we can get the machine out of our way. So first step, we need to poke them out of the die. Now all three of these flowers are from the same set. They're just different flowers. It gives it a little bit of variation. I will put on the supply list. I'll have a picture of each of the cards and the supplies used for each in case you're wondering what's used for the rest of it, as well as the ink pad colors and stuff like that. All right, so we've got those all ready. Now before I start to color these, what I want to do is ink around our embossed piece, and I'm going to glue it to the card front, simply because these embossed pieces, and this one especially, is quite warped. They need to be weighed down in order to dry so that it'll dry nice and flat, and then it should be somewhat ready for us by the time we're ready to glue on the flowers. So I've got a block here that I'm going to weigh it down with. I just gotta take the stamps off. So let's do that. Now when I'm putting the glue on, I want to make sure, especially to get glue on the parts that are going to make contact with our card base. So I'm definitely not going to be skimpy with the glue. And then I'm going to center it. And I'm just putting it right here so it's out of my way. And I'm going to put my acrylic block down, just straighten it a tiny bit, and that can hold that there. If you need a little bit of extra weight, you can put some extra weight on it. I don't have anything else that's that heavy, so I'll just leave that glue on it right now. So I've got my die cuts here, and I'm going to, any bits that are in between, like that didn't come out when you die cut them, you want to take those out now. Should have gotten this ready ahead of time, but forgot about these little things. So these are little mini distress blending sticks, and I'm going to use that to help color my die cuts. So I'm going to do the green for the stems first, and then I will use the pink for the flowers. Now what I didn't do in this one that I did do in these ones is I used a jumbo dauber and I inked around the edges. So if you want to frame it a little bit more, you will want to do that step before gluing it down. I got a little bit too eager and forgot about that step and just glued it down. So these, basically they're just little pieces of foam on the end of a dowel. And you can buy them this way. You could also use like a Q-tip or something like that. That would work as well. But all I'm doing is using them to color in my die cut. And when I have a bigger die cut, I'll often use like a jumbo dauber or a finger dauber. For something smaller like this and a little bit more detailed, these are handy because you can get in fairly detailed areas. And you can be a little bit more precise with your inking. Now I got a little bit at the bottom of the flower, but I don't really worry too much about that. That could be just a little bit of greenery. When you're looking at the whole thing as a whole, or when people are, you tend not to look at all the fine detail, exactly how it's colored for something like this anyways. All right, and now the pink. I clearly got some of the blue when I was putting it on the Gelli plate. So if you're concerned about that, I would say use a re-inker instead, or smush it onto your surface first before inking your plate. It's funny, it didn't do that the first time I used it that way, but it did do it this time. So it tends not to affect the color anyways, because that's just on the surface. So in general, I don't usually worry too much about it. Now you can see when I'm inking this here that there is definitely some lines from my foam. I'm a little bit heavier on the outside, it seems, than on the inside. You can, if you want, just direct that at a place that you want the flower a little bit more, a little bit darker. And you can also use it in a circular motion to blend it out. I tend to be a little bit more careful when I'm doing it in a blended motion because it's just a tiny little piece of foam that I don't think is very, I think you would easily be able to tear up the foam if you weren't careful. All right, so I'm going to glue these pieces on here and then I'm going to weigh it down again. That probably wasn't quite enough time to hold the die cut or the embossed piece down really, really well. So I want to make sure to put my acrylic block right back over top of it to give it a little bit more weight while I'm doing the sentiment piece. I'm just lightly laying them on top of each other. I don't need to make sure it has contact yet because the acrylic block, when I put it on there to weigh it down, that will do that. So there we go. You just place them however you like and then set them down. I'm going to clean this off first before doing my sentiment. Now the sentiment is from a set called Tiny Text that I'll put on the supply list. It's just a full set of all different sentiments, and I tend to make an entire sheet of them and cut them down so that I have a lot of sentiments to use at one time. So what I'm going to do with that is I'm going to take a piece of my blue here and I'm going to create a mat around it so that it just pops up. If I put this on the card like this, you don't see it as well as when it has something around it that frames it. Just had a little bit of a paper tear on there, so let's get that off. I'm going to use this part here so that I can use some of this. So I'm going to glue it on first, and then I'm going to use my trimmer to trim around it. Now it does get a little bit fiddly trying to cut a really, really tiny border. And it's one of those things that gets easier with time. All right, now I'm gonna put this right over my block here, trying not to shift it. So I line it up with the ruler on my trimmer in order to get a nice straight cut. That's pretty good, and then I line up with the one on the end to get that cut off there. So there we've got our piece here. Now really, if I was doing this just alone, I would make sure that I have this stuff all out of the way, but I just wanted you to be able to see this as it is drying. I need my foam pop dots. I had them right here, but oh, there, now I see exactly where they are. One of those things that you don't see even though it's right in front of you. So you could glue this straight flat to the card as well if you wanted. I like the foam pop dots because it gives it a tiny little bit of extra dimension. That backing doesn't want to come off. There we go. Now that other backing didn't want to come off. All right. So now line it up. And there we go. Very simple and easy card. Just done with one of the embossing folder jelly print backgrounds. We'll see in the next card. We're going to do the one with some texture paste.